seconds remaining in regulation. The inbound. Hit the walls of have won their fifth championship in the last 7 years.
As hundreds of thousands of fans cheered the Bulls, the drama of what will happen to this great dynasty was apparent to all.
This will be Phil's last year as the coach of the Bulls. At the conclusion of the year, we'll look towards the future.
After the fifth championship, we realized, other than Michael, the rest of the guys were probably at the end of their high productive years. And we realized maybe this was the time to do a rebuild and not try to win its sixth championship.
The game's over.
Have a sense of respect for the people who have laid the groundwork so that you can be a profitable organization.
Can the Bulls keep this team together?
Is there any doubt that Michael will come back?
I just kept hearing this over and over again, and I was just getting irritated. Like, we were winning.
Michael Jordan's the only player that could ever turn it on and off, and he never freaking turned it off.
It just didn't seem real.
There was none other like him.
His balance, his footwork.
We felt like we were the greatest team ever.
You have to wonder why Michael Jordan, who is surely the most popular player in our time, would be, in effect, driven out of professional basketball.
We're entitled to defend what we have until we lose it.
The only question, how long can it last?
So welcome to this special edition of Getting the Game. I am your host, Marvin, and not only are we going to be talking in sports today, we're here talking with a special guest today that's joining me today. We're joined by a former alumni of SUNY Westbury. He is covering the NBA, the MLB. He's also currently covering the Kansas City Chiefs, who just, by the way, won the Super Bowl. We're joined by Ed Easton Jr. Ed, thank you for joining us. I know it's obviously a lot going on during this pandemic, but thank you for taking your time and joining us. So how are you today?
I'm doing great, man, and thank you for the invite. And everything's been going on in the world right now, and you were shouting out the fact that I cover the Chiefs and different things. Right now, I'm just covering the house, so outside of most things. But I just hope everyone's safe out there, and I hope you're safe as well.
Absolutely. So today, I want to focus on a certain documentary that happened on Sunday, and there was a lot going on. Obviously, there's no sports going on. So everybody had, something needed to be happening. So they decided, ESPN decided to release the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. So the first two episodes came out. Ed, obviously, I wasn't born. We talked about this a little bit. I wasn't even born when the Last Dance happened. So, first of all, I want to ask what was your initial reactions from watching the first two episodes, and what was your biggest takeaway?
I will say my biggest reaction was the fact that they were going to be so raw about all the information they were talking about, and just growing up in that time. Like I was about maybe 10, 11 years old when the Last Dance I could say was occurring, the 97-98 season. I watched Michael Jordan throughout his career, just followed the Bulls, and I'm a Knicks fan, so it's been rough, just having to watch that aspect of it. I will say that there was always these questions about what happened. Why couldn't his team have stayed together a little longer, especially since Jordan came back later with the Wizards? The way they opened it up, giving a little background, and I love the way ESPN does these documentaries, these 30 for 30s, because they make it so that anybody that's not a sports fan or somebody that wasn't around during that time could pick up on what's going on. So I thought they did a great job just showing a little bit what Jordan was going through growing up, then doing a flashback to everything happening during that 98 season, them going over to France, playing the preseason games. I love the setup. I love the way they introduced each person, each, pivotal character in this story, because at the end of the day, you want to know, especially a person growing up in that time, why this team couldn't stay together longer than it did. So I just thought it was a perfect introduction to it. And I'm curious to see how they continue it on, especially since they have to introduce Rodman and more players.
Well, another question I want to ask for you is, you said you've been watching early on, you watched the Bulls and their last couple of seasons, but, we see I think for me, I'm a lot younger, and so I don't really remember Jordan playing. I think another storyline that we realize kind of forget is some things happen in the NBA where we're looking like it, where players are low managed, right? And then we see a story where Michael Jordan wasn't even playing more than 7 minutes during his in one of his early seasons because of the foot injury. And now it's kind of, for me, I think the biggest takeaway was we see a lot of things happen during the 80s that we still kind of see towards now. I don't know if you caught that during the documentary.
Well, that part was when he had broke his foot, and it's the second year, and obviously he did everything with the Celtics. They had him on a 7 minute per quarter type of situation, and obviously that's not enough minutes to be playing for a guy like Michael Jordan. They still do that now to this day, but I think when it comes to an injury like that and the severity of it, you got to talk about technology is a lot better. So players do rehab differently than they did back in 1986. Yeah. So that's a big takeaway. But players, you ask any player, and I know you've talked to many of them, they play hurt all the time.
Yep.
It's just a matter of if you're injured or are you hurt. Because if you're hurt, you can play. If you're injured, you can't play. That's always been the big thing they say. When it comes to Jordan, they just want to show how a different type of beast he was. That he would go against doctors' orders. He would go against coaches' decisions because he wanted to play. And I think that's really what they were pushing ahead in regards to that segment.
Yeah, and I think also, one of the one of my biggest takeaways was probably early on, right? After they won the championship, their 5th championship.
Yes.
And Michael Jordan, gets asked right after they win the title about, ownership and the future of the Bulls. And right away, it was shocking for me because you don't really see this, during the celebration. Being asked about the future of the Bulls. And right away, he said, we earn the right to defend what we won. And he said that after the 97 season, and that, kind of got me. I'm like, wow. It kind of gave me kind of a perspective of what something was going on. And clearly the future of the Bulls was near the end. But, him saying that at a news conference right after the championship, there was a lot of tensions between the GM and ownership and the players at that time because, a dynasty that nearly 5 championships in 7 years at that time and going out the way it did. Are you shocked that the Bulls separated the way they did? What do you think?
You know what? The 11-year-old, 10-year-old me would have been shocked. I was shocked. I was like, how is this team? No one expected Jordan to right away retire, especially after coming back, after taking a year and a half off. But when you learn the details now that, time has passed and we start hearing from different players, because that's really what happened since that initial breakup. You started hearing more stories. When it was happening, you were kind of in the dark. You were just kind of wondering about Scottie Pippen's contract. You were wondering about Jerry Krause, the whole situation with him. I remember during that time just not really understanding it, not understanding the business of basketball, because that's really what this all was. This was business. Jerry Krause wanted his shine. He wanted to be known as the architect of this team. And to an extent he was. But he wanted to be, right next to Jordan on every billboard. And realistically, that's just not how it's going to work. So Phil Jackson comes into play because Phil Jackson has a mentality that he wants to be a guy that can make decisions. He's basically the general manager in his mind. So there becomes a power struggle within that aspect of it. That's why he didn't want Phil back for that last season. As you saw, Tim Floyd was who he was courting for that whole time. And if you know your history, Tim Floyd eventually became the head coach of the Bulls, those horrible Bulls teams after Jordan and Pippen and everybody left. So there was always this power struggle. And I think Krause, in the back of his mind, maybe had fears of Phil Jackson eventually being given that role and him being pushed out. So he kind of had to say, hey, I'm in control and, do some things that it probably obviously he passed away that maybe he would have regretted. Like the whole situation with Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen should have been paid more. We know the NBA contracts became very different after the 91 season. You talk about TV deals and everything that came with the NBA, the whole image with Jordan exploring the way he did, everybody got paid. There should be no reason why Scottie Pippen doesn't get paid. So it was things like that, it all kind of sums it all up as to why there was going to be issues. And this is stuff that we learn now. But back then, remember, there's no social media back then. Everything, you had to find out everything from a newspaper. You had to get the newspaper. You had to listen to it on the radio, watch the news. There was no immediate, response or anything, whether it was from a player where, like, nowadays a player could just tweet out, "Oh, I'm not happy," or "I was misquoted." Back then, they literally had to wait for Craig Sager, David Aldridge, people like that, in order to get their message across. And you saw how open they were during those messages. The press conference, as you just brought up, that was their place where they can really say how they feel. So you couldn't do that any other way. And that's the big difference from then to today, because today you'll know about that before it even happens. That's just the way the world works.
So now I want to focus on Michael Jordan. You've seen Michael Jordan live. I haven't. But talk about at that time. We saw him in Paris having the biggest poster probably in the city.
Yes.
I mean, how big was Michael Jordan at that time when he was on top of the NBA?
I'm going to put it in the best way I could break it down for you. You obviously know how big LeBron James is, right? LeBron James is not even a third of in terms of popularity as Michael Jordan was. I'm talking about people were like, they would do anything to go to a game to see Jordan play, just to see him walk around, just to see him do anything. Like, there was never an athlete, especially during that time in the 90s, that you could compare him to. There was just no one else in any other sport. And you were putting him up there with, like, rock legends, music legends like that. He was already that, and he was still going. And the best part about Jordan, that when they had these debates between Jordan and LeBron, he never let you down. It's very rare when Jordan lets you down in a big moment. So everyone always has their memories of him. I remember going to a game to see him, and he didn't even have his best game, but everything he did was like the crowd was just shaking, just going, there was just, it's an air, a different air he walked on. He walked very comfortable. Like, there was no nerves in him. He talked to fans, or you saw how he had like one of his handlers come over and say, "Hey, I'm busy right now," things like that. He was always swarmed with people. It was something that, I don't think we'll ever see again. LeBron is close to that, but mind you, Jordan did this without social media, without these extra things in terms of technology. People just around the world knew who he was and went crazy for him. And like I said, I just haven't seen anybody else be that big like him.
I mean, for a person that hasn't watched him, I mean, I've seen the documentary of the Dream Team, and I've seen the his game through highlights, but I can never imagine the way it was at that time of like the aura around Michael Jordan. But I think a question I wanted to also ask is, how do you think his effect on the court, off the court, has affected a lot of players to today's game? A lot of players, Kobe, right?
Yes.
Ron, a lot of players emulate what Jordan did when he was on top of the league. Where do you think players can learn, or even have learned, from Michael Jordan?
Well, I think the number one takeaway, and look, to me, the biggest comparison to Jordan, I always said, was Kobe, rest in peace. I was a big Kobe guy. I got to speak with him myself, and you could just see the mannerisms, the way he handled things in terms of the media, the way Jordan's brand, because I think that's the biggest thing people got from him, was the way he branded himself. If you know the story between like him when he got signed by Nike, and Nike wasn't even a big sneaker company at the time. In terms of, like, when I say big sneaker company, in terms of the NBA. The NBA was all about Converse and, Magic and Bird. They were the ones that were really like the big manufacturer right there. When Jordan came along and he brought this new style to it, he had Spike Lee in the commercials. He did all these different things. He made the sneakers, like his Jordan brand sneakers, such a must-have that we're still talking about it today. And it's guys like you that haven't even seen him play live, but you know about the Jordan sneakers. It's just that type of effect. So when you have young players growing up watching them, like Kobe did, like LeBron did, Dwayne Wade, all these type of players, they start to see it and they say, okay, how do I do what Mike did, not only on the court, but off the court, in terms of branding myself? That's how you have all these different guys doing businesses, having movie deals and different things so that they just can be self-sufficient. One of the biggest things about Jordan that Jerry Krause hated, and I think you saw a little bit, the back and forth when Jordan would make jokes about his height and his weight and things of that nature. Krause couldn't do anything. Because remember, Krause never brought in Jordan in the first place. Krause got there 2 years after Jordan was already there. So you have a guy who can basically live off his sneakers alone, his endorsements alone, and they were signing Jordan, and I'll never forget this, and I don't know if you noticed it from the graphic. Jordan would wait till right before training camp starts to negotiate his contract. He'd only sign 1-year deals worth about $30 million each year.
It's crazy. So The Last Dance, the next episodes of 3 and 4 will be on Sunday, ESPN, and then eventually it will be available on Netflix as well. Ed Easton Jr., we appreciate you taking your time. I know you could be busy throughout this pandemic, but thank you for taking your time. For anybody that wants Ed's Instagram or Twitter, just go to at Ed Easton Jr. You could follow him, and he has a lot of amazing contents. I know you're probably going to pay attention to the NFL draft too. So, and all stories in sports. So definitely, I appreciate your time here, and thank you for joining me.
And it was a pleasure, man. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and let's hope we get out of this quick, man.
Yeah, we need the sports back, so hopefully we get them quick as soon as we can. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Get in the Game.